All right, folks, hope everybody's doing well. This is Wednesday's episode of Beyond the Gates, episode 136, which was strangely fixated on rings. The fact that Vanessa finally removes her ring when she's with Joey, Naomi losing hers, I believe, in the bathroom of the diner, and Derek giving a ring to Ashley. So, guess it was kind of significant. But yeah, I'm giving this one a 8 out of 10. And let's jump into this thing. So over at the diner, you have Jacob and Naomi running into Marcel. And of course, Marcel's not going to waste any time, try to sticking it to Jacob in regards to being a goody two-shoes cop who's really not going to go anywhere career-wise because, with one word, he'll just be stuck on desk duty for the rest of his career, because Jacob is still, I guess you could say, grounded by his boss, aka his father, Elon. But, he even goes so far as to say, well, rookie, it's a good thing you married to a woman from a rich family because your career is really not going anywhere. But then Naomi claps back by saying that, hey, well, the world could use more good cops who are stand up like him. So that's when Marcel's like, let me get up out of here, which is funny because, yesterday I watched the new Netflix film by Tyler Perry and Devon Franklin, Ruth and Boaz. And the actor that plays Detective Malone plays the pastor in that film. And I'm like, what a change of pace, especially after what he does to Doug later, a couple episodes later. So from there, they chat with June about Samantha and how things are going for her in school. And that's when June tells them about how Smitty went off on her. And she won't explain much more about the situation and just tells them to get out of the diner. So this is an interesting moment here because Ted pops up to get some coffee, and June is really pleasant with him. So this was probably the most talked about moment of the episode, the fact that Ted might be trying to rizz up June. And I think one of the funniest quotes I've been seeing circulating around is, well, we know Ted has a thing for waitresses. And I've already mentioned Naomi, Vanessa, and who else was it? Oh yeah, Ashley and Derek involving rings. But that's when June notices Ted's wedding ring and the fact that he's like, well, I'm married, at least for now, because, I have a family and just, they mean everything to me. And despite all that, I love them even when they try to make me out to be the villain. But here's the thing, and I want to be completely honest. When you really think about it, and I'm not trying to ship them together, but the more we get to know of Ted in scenarios like this, the more similar he seems to Leslie than to Nicole. Because, for example, a week or so ago, when he went over to, get props for stopping Leslie from moving in next door, and he got, pretty much just roasted by the Dupree family before he went off on him. It's almost like Ted, he wants the highest praise for doing the the less than the bare minimum of effort. Because when I listened to him tell June about, his situation, and let me repeat that. Yeah, I got a family and they mean everything to me, even when they make me out to be the villain. And I'm thinking, but Ted, you are. I mean, you're the one who messed up. You're the one who stepped out on your wife during a very trying time in your relationship. And as a result, it got to the point where you had to pay off / run off your mistress. And now she's come back for revenge. And it's just like, yeah. So I don't really know what you mean by they make me out to be the villain when it's like you kind of are. So that's when June tells him about, how, well, just recently my kids came back into my life. And even though he thinks it's beautiful, he encourages her to hold on to him. And I'm like, Ted, if you only knew, like, this is the biological mother of your adoptive grandchildren. So after she gets up from the table, she goes back to work, but then finds some rings in the bathroom. And he's like, oh, well, someone must have left them on purpose or something. And they aren't able to find out who owns them. So that's when he starts playing with his wedding ring on his finger. And he talks about how he put it on with so much hope and optimism that he wasn't being a fool about it or something. And essentially Ted tells June to take care of herself and he walks out. But you could tell there was some sparks there between them. And that's when June puts it together and it's like, oh, wait a minute. I think I know who owns the rings. So over at the casino, Doug is out of money. And he figures, you know what? I got this watch for my anniversary from Vanessa. Let me go ahead and use this as collateral. But then he loses it. And that's when he just keeps sipping on his drink. And what the heck? You got the dealer just looking like, so what else you got? And that's when Marcel comes and like, damn, Doug, you need to watch yourself for real. Ha, get it? Watch. And then that's when Doug complains about the table gone cold on him. And I'm thinking to myself, well, it's pretty hot whenever Joey and Vanessa are on it. Yeah, I said it. So that's when Marcel says, well, luck can flip in a heartbeat. Any real player knows that. Basically encourage him, to keep on playing. So we shift over to Puerto Rico, and Vanessa and Joey are there having a good time, and she feels like she stepped into a dream just because of the fact that this change of scenery has done some good for her, And he says that, well, at this point, it's like we're just escaping the judgment of other people, so we can truly enjoy ourselves in Puerto Rico. And that's when he gets a text from Marcel about Doug digging himself deeper, not just in, debt, but also in alcohol. So Vanessa distracts him by getting undressed, and then that's when they start making out. So she has a realization that, wait a minute, this is my first time ever packing a bag, and I left Doug behind. And she's like, wow, I can't believe it took me so long to do this. This is a wonderful feeling. And then that's when Joey's like, well, speaking of wonderful, how about instead of clothes, you take off that wedding ring? And she's not really sure she wants to do it, but that's when he kind of, persuades her by saying, look, you deserve much better than someone like Doug. And at this point, I never asked about that ring because I never felt like I had the right to, but given how, we're far away from, the gated community, you're so far away from your husband, I want you to be completely mine while we're here. And the ring itself is, well, let's be real, a symbol of what you left behind. And that's when she's like, I just can't. So that's when his phone goes off and her phone starts buzzing. And it turns out to be Doug, who is incredibly drunk at this point. And she could already tell over the phone, vodka, isn't it? Woman, I drank the dark liquor. And then that's when he's like, look, I'm sorry that I went out to gamble even though you asked me not to. It's like, I'm such a loser. I just lost everything. And at this point, I know I've even lost you. And that's when, Vanessa's like, well, I hope that losing everything could be some sort of turning point for you to realize to give this stuff up. And that's when Joey is in the background making it clear that he's there, because Joey, like, when he wants his presence known, he will make his voice louder. And that's when Doug is like, there you are with that bargain basement Tony Soprano. And that's when, you know what, Doug, I'm not going to talk to you right now. Once you sober up, we can discuss this like mature adults. But then it's like, you know what? I thought that making this phone call, I made a mistake. And no, I'm not talking about the gambling or the drinking. I made the mistake of calling the one person who was guaranteed to break what little heart I had left. So that's when he hangs up. Vanessa is just stunned by the conversation she just had. And it's funny because you got Joey in the background looking satisfied when she turns around. It's like, you did that on purpose, didn't you? What? All I'm saying is you need to step away from that loser. Look at the wreckage he's made of both his life and your life. And I want you to be happy. I want you to be with me in every possible way. And I guess the emotions of everything, she just decides, you know what, fine. She takes the ring off and that's it. So we go over to the casino and Marcel gets Doug another drink. Come on, this is ridiculous. So he sits back down at the table, and it's like, at this point, man, what are you doing? Like, what do you got to bet? So Marcel steps out and gets a text. Or I'm sorry, Joey steps out and gets a text from Marcel saying, "Start the countdown." And as he gets the text, he's like, mm-hmm. Joey goes back inside, and then he and Vanessa have sex. So Doug winds up winning big. And then he's like, ha ha ha. Can't wait to tell Joey I cleaned him out. Yep, this dude has hands full of wads of cash. And as he's, just kind of celebrating, remember, dude is just so drunk right now. Marcel is just, yep, you did good. You did good, Doc. And that's when Doug's like, wait a minute. Where is everybody? Oh, well, I guess they must have had someplace to go. And then that's when Marcel starts grabbing the money from Doug, and it's like, hey, wait, that's my money. And then we switch perspectives to seeing a very distorted or blurry vision Doug looking at Marcel's like, oh, you won't need money, where you going? Now, look, I know he was drunk, so he wasn't thinking clear and whatnot, but I just know from watching this show that if you just so happen to win a lot of money and you are one of the only people in the casino, get the money and leave. Because I think about when Bill dropped that money off for Kenneth and he didn't instantly just leave. You had Randy come in and try to kill him. In this situation, Doug has all this money, and instead of leaving, well, then, like I said, he was just drunk, completely just hammered at this point. He just over here celebrating. Hey, wait, what are you doing with my money? Oh, no. And, well, that's the end of that. So, we go over to Ashley's place, or I guess you could say Ashley and Derek's place at this point, and she's cleaning up from, the little party they had with Jacob and Naomi earlier. And she mentions how it was fun, having them over and things kind of felt normal. And that's when he mentions how he admires how she held everything down. And as he sneaks out the ring, she opens a beer and tells Derek about the talk she had with Naomi. And she mentions how she wants to build a future with him. So she actually accidentally spills her beer, and then she runs to get some towels. And the lady upstairs calls and asks about taking out the trash. So Ashley runs out, and that's when Derek accidentally drops his ring, and he strains to reach it. So that's when Ashley comes back in and notice how he's been panting, and the ring is on the floor. So that's when she goes off on him about pushing himself too hard, too fast. And that's when he mentions how he kept that ring in case she would change her mind one day, and then he puts it on her finger. And that's when she mentions that, look, the two of us in our relationship are strong because you never let go. And that's when, they start kissing. So she eventually makes it to the couch with him, and she mentions how she doesn't want to set back his recovery. So they agree just to cuddle. And I'm thinking to myself, if they get a bit too intimate, she'll probably notice that his legs are working. That's all I'm saying. And speaking of couples, Naomi and Jacob get home to their bedroom. I know it's a running gag. People are like, man, these two only have a bedroom. Yeah, we'll probably see something else later. But they talk about Ashley and Derek, and Jacob mentions how he wants them to stop using their mouths for talking. So they make out, and that's when she notices her wedding rings are gone, and all of them are gone. And I thought as people were online, I saw people online going back and forth about, ladies, do you take your rings off in public when you're in like a public restroom? A lot of people say no, but this is soap world. So she starts tearing apart the room looking for the rings, and he's like, look, hey, Naomi, they're just rings. We can get new ones. And that's when she's like, look, remember, you spent months designing our rings. And that's when Jacob's like, look, we could just make more. And Naomi says, it won't be the same. Like, what would it symbolize if I had to replace the rings because I lost them out of carelessness? And he mentions how, look, you don't need to freak out because losing these rings aren't some sign of, doom or despair. And she mentions how the rings are irreplaceable. And it seems like a lot of drama over nothing. But that's when June calls about the rings and she gets them back. And Naomi apologizes for being so reckless with them. And he says, like, look, they're only rings. Our love is what matters. So that's when he pulls out those fuzzy handcuffs that we haven't seen in quite a while. And then they make out. Now, Naomi freaking out like this. Look, yes, I am late on these reviews. So I think I know the real reason why she's upset. Hormones, pregnancy. Yeah. But I really do feel like, this isn't out of her character because given the fact, especially after her parents' divorce, I feel like Naomi's the kind of person where, and I think we've seen a couple signs of this in the past, where she will look at the slightest bit of friction in her marriage just the slightest bit, and then take it as the worst possible case scenario. And it's like, if my parents got a divorce, then us fighting about something will lead to a divorce as well. And me losing these rings is like a symbol of our marriage falling apart. And it's like, it's a bit much on the nose. But to be fair, it isn't just her parents. I mean, look at how much of a model marriage her aunt and uncle Ted and Nicole had, and how that was full of lies. So it's almost like, well, if, you know, 2 long-lasting marriages within my family, including my parents, didn't last, then what chance do me and Jacob have? So, all right, well, that was the episode in a nutshell. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Like and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next video.